For years now, there has been an ongoing argument about which is better, consoles or PC. Now, there is a plethora of things I would like to say to both sides. Like, who the fuck cares about which one is better? They all have their pros and cons, and are catered toward different people. Now, I do not want to sound like a PC Master Race guy here, but one of the most important benefits of playing on PC are the mods. While technically Fallout 4 and Skyrim do have them on PS4 and Xbox One too, they still have some limitations, especially Sony's console. I highly admire Bethesda for being able to integrate mods on consoles, as it is an impressive feat to not let mods reduce performance. Anyway, we aren't here to gush about Bethesda, but to talk about the mods that became full-fledged games. Let's begin. No, on second thought I haven't finished the introduction yet. In this list, there are some mods that have become so massive they can practically be another game, and then there are others that have become so popular they have become independent from their starting game. Now, without further ado, let's begin, this time for real. One of the most versatile and beautiful engines nowadays is the amazing Unreal Engine. Now arrived to its 4th iteration, tons and tons of games use it to achieve amazing visuals and is somewhat popular amongst indie developers. However, back in 2004, when Unreal Tournament was one of the most popular arena shooters, a mod was developed that would eventually become its own game, and that is Red Orchestra. It was a first-person shooter that recreated the events between 1941 and 1945 of the Soviet Union against Nazi Germany. Red Orchestra didn't just apply some skins to characters and maps, it completely revolutionized Unreal Tournament. From a fast-paced and frenetic action, World War II brought everything to a slow, tactical, and extremely realistic approach. Everything was completely overhauled to make it feel realistic. The developers, Tripwire Interactive, managed to get the license for the engine when they managed to win Nvidia's Make Something Unreal contest, thus granting them also the money to continue working on Red Orchestra, which also got a sequel. But that's not the last time we're gonna see their names. In fact, since apparently they are modding masters, Tripwire Interactive also developed another mod for Unreal Tournament, this time with the zombie team. They dubbed the game Killing Floor and released it in 2009. Again, the normal gameplay of Unreal Tournament has been overhauled, while not as much as Red Orchestra. Of course, the game was still pretty basic and was overshadowed by Left 4 Dead. This, however, didn't stop Tripwire Interactive to develop Killing Floor 2, which to this day has sold over 1 million copies on Steam alone, because it has also been released for the PS4. Oh boy, here we go, down into the abyss of the million of titles made with the Source Engine. And the first one I want to talk about today is maybe the lesser known title, Dear Esther. The original project was a mod of Half-Life 2, made by a group in the University of Portsmouth that will later be known as the Chinese Room, famous for the Amnesia sequel and the most recent Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. Dear Esther has many similarities with it, as both are what we now consider to be walking simulators, or experimental first-person storytelling games, where gameplay is minimal. While this isn't just another mod with reskins, it also completely changed the genre of the original game it was based upon. While most mods of Half-Life still retain combat one way or the other, Dear Esther completely removes it, as you wander around an island searching for clues of a man reading letters to his deceased wife. The game was later remade into a full-fledged title, and has been recently been remastered and ported to consoles with the Landmark Edition. If you enjoy these types of games, then this could be considered one of the first. Another great mod of Half-Life 2 was Age of Chivalry, or Chivalry, developed by Thorn Banner Studios. Like Dear Esther, this mod, while still retaining combat, completely modified it and set everything in a medieval setting. Age of Chivalry, or Chivalry, aims to deliver quick-paced and unforgiving 1v1 combat, while in the midst of a huge and bloody battle. Maps were very large and encouraged small tactics within teams to try and get the enemy by surprise. However, gameplay was still very rough, and in 2012 it evolved into Chivalry or Chivalry Medieval Warfare, a game I enjoyed playing myself. Abandoning the Source Engine in favor of Unreal, Chivalry or Chivalry expands upon the original and vastly improves every aspect of it. Now combat is more precise, still unforgiving as ever, bloodier, frenetic, and maps have become even more complex and interactive. Another game similar in vein to Dear Esther is the famous Stanley Parable. the last game on this list to completely revamp Half-Life. The Stanley Parable is often regarded as one of the most thought-provoking, original, and brilliant video games to ever exist. You, as Stanley, will navigate around different environments, all while a narrator tells you what to do. Or is he? The game is full of crypticism and mystery, and you are never fully sure if you're doing the right thing. After garnering tons of attention, Davey Redden, the game's original sole creator, was contacted by another programmer to remake the entire game using new assets, and the new version will later be released as a full-fledged title on Steam. In fact, Redden didn't know how to use Source Engine and made the Stanley Parable with help from wikis and the Source Toolkit. Let's take a break from Source games. Now you all know Doom. The game that revolutionized gaming in 1993 was a huge success, and inevitably spawned lots of clones and also mods. One of the most famous mods is Brutal Doom, that manages to ramp up the violence and gore even more. That alone is an amazing feat, but it doesn't just add more bloodstains to your screen. It also adds more gameplay features, such as a higher difficulty, smoother animations, new tricks with weapons, revamped AI, and more. It's basically the original Doom refined perfectly. Oh, did I mention it's also more gory and violent? Departing from the violent world of Doom is the total conversion mod of The Elder Scrolls 4, Oblivion. Bethesda has always been famous for making their games easy to work on, especially with the creation engine, and has always supported modders to work on their games. One of the most famous mod teams in the scene is the German Sure AI, and for a reason. In 2006, they began working on what we know today as Nerim at Fate's Edge. What this game does is basically use its excuse to be a mod to use the engine and create a whole new game. Well, not that new, it's still a medieval fantasy RPG, but it has nothing to do with the Elder Scrolls series. While still retaining some elements, combat, enemies, fast travel, experience gain, and basically everything you know about Oblivion is completely revamped. This should be seen as a completely standalone game, so much so that other mods have been made exclusively for Nerim. But this is not the only game in this position. In fact, in number 6 I also put Endroll, Sure AI's next big project for the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. This mod is even better than Nerim, making use of the team experience and more people, and the more advanced creation engine. This is basically Skyrim on steroids. It also won Best Fan Creation Award at the Game Awards 2016. The last game not based on Source Engine is Fallout 1.5, a mod for the isometric Fallout 2. This mod bridges the gap between Fallout 1 and 2, but not in a story sense of way. Instead, it just takes place between the first and second game, while developing a new and engrossing story. While the structure and gameplay doesn't change, Fallout 1.5 offers completely new locations, weapons, NPCs, quests, and more, and still manages to retain the trademark sense of humor of the franchise. This mod can basically be another isometric Fallout game, and was made in 10 years by 4 passionate SEC developers. Let's start with the big names now. One of the most famous mods of Arma 2 is DayZ, that garnered so much attention that it reached 1 million players in its first 4 months, with thousands of people rushing to buy Arma 2 just to play it. It became so famous, in fact, that the developer, Dean Hall, became part of Bohemia Interactive so he could develop it as a standalone game. The game then launched on Steam with enormous success, despite being in early access. In fact, the craze of survival games in early access could be traced back to the success of DayZ. As its counterpart Arma 2, DayZ is extremely realistic, focusing on the player's ability to stay alive, while fighting off both zombies and other players. Retaining huge maps, 50-player servers, tons of customization and crafting, DayZ is one of the most successful zombie survival games out there, while still being in early access. What is with Valve and their inability to release games with the number 3 on it? Another example of this is Team Fortress 2, one of Valve's most successful games, even before it went free to play. The game, while Valve not giving a shit about it nowadays, has been praised for its cartoony graphics and light-hearted atmosphere. But the first Team Fortress wasn't like this, at all. In fact, the first version of it wasn't even a game, but a mod of Quake from 1996. 3 years later, the game was re-released as another mod, this time for Half-Life, as the development team was bought by Valve. Finally, in 2003, Team Fortress Classic was released, this time as a standalone title. The game introduced the staples of this franchise, such as the famous classes, game modes, and more. While not featuring innovative mechanics, years ago this was the game to play on PC, alongside the next game on this list. The game everybody who played hates and loves, and those that never played it fear its name, is Counter-Strike. The most recent iteration, Global Offensive, is one of the highest grossing games on Steam, and possibly the third largest esport game. Counter-Strike means precision, reflexes, chicabliat, a toxic community, and skins. Counter-Strike was originally developed as a mod for Half-Life, making it into a realistic shooter. The two men behind it were then hired by Valve, before releasing the game in 2000. Often regarded as Counter-Strike 1.6, this game had a tremendous amount of influence on what Valve is today, but not as much as the final game in our list. Valve's most precious property, or the grand prize in esports, is $18 million, and being the most played game on Steam is Dota 2. A lot of people, however, don't dig in the history of the series, simply playing the game that for them is 10 times better than League of Assets. So many people don't know that the first Dota, or Defense of the Ancients, was originally a mod for Blizzard's Warcraft 3. Dota basically invented one of the most popular genres today, MOBAs. Fusing elements of Warcraft 3's real-time strategy with heroes and online multiplayer, Dota was a huge hit, so much that Valve again bought it and developed the ever so popular Dota 2. Do I even have to continue its merits? While not liking the MOBA genre, I have to respect Dota for what it created, possibly even esports itself. So who knows, maybe you have played at least some of the games on this list, and what we can learn from this is that you don't have to be in a development team to make a game. You just have to be passionate about video games, and be a little creative too. See you in the next video.